It's Monday, Alex, and when this show is over, we'll be one step closer to Monday being completely done.
That's a really nice thought to have to kick off the Monday, that this day will be over soon. Have you had a bad Monday so far?
No,
Have
no,
you had
just
a case of the Mondays?
no. I got this. It looks like there's like the rays of Ra behind me right now, even though I have shut the blinds. It's like whatever the way the sun is coming in to that window because I shifted my desk over about a foot and a half to accommodate a shelf that I put together this weekend, and now I have this just it looks like I have a white screen right here.
It is a tad incandescent coming from that side of the room.
Let's see if I like kind of flicker my hand. You can kind of
It's like a real
look.
yeah.
See, look.
Oh yeah, no, I can see you get a little bit of the blinds in there.
I can. So, how was your weekend?
Not too bad. A girlfriend was out of town in your neck of the woods, actually, doing some stuff at Lollapalooza for her job.
Wait, what does she
Uh,
do?
she works at Billboard, and they were doing some stuff there at the show with some bands. I think like photo gallery type stuff. So she was there working the show. Sounded like she didn't have a whole lot of fun because it was working and not necessarily getting to watch a lot of bands play. But
Yeah, I didn't go. I don't even really go to live. I haven't. When's the last concert I went to? I couldn't even tell you. I don't really go to live music that much anymore.
yeah, I've gone to a few shows like in the city, but I can't remember the last time I went to like an actual festival thing. I think the last time I went, oh god, I can't remember what it was called. It was one of those. It was one of the hip hop tours. It was the one where a Tribe Called Quest reunited for a brief minute. Rock the Bells, that's what it was. And that was like 5 years ago, 4 years, 5 years ago. So yeah, I don't do that very often.
Yeah, I was upset that I didn't actually get to go to Lollapalooza last year. I can't remember why I wasn't able to make it, but at the drive-in when they had reunited for that brief period of time
Oh yeah.
was at Lollapalooza, and at the drive-in was like the defining band of my. Oh right, I listen to real music. Like
Yeah.
when you have that moment when you were younger where you graduate from just listening to the music that is spoon-fed to you to actually sort of discovering stuff
Oh
and.
yeah.
And at the drive-in was like Weezer. I became obsessed with because they were more of a pop culture band, with the Blue Album and things like that. So at least they were legitimately good when I got obsessed with them. But at the drive-in was my secret, like, oh, I found them, and I got really really into them.
Now, how was that show? Because when I went and saw Tribe, they were great, but at the same time, you could tell that everyone in that group fucking hated Q-Tip because he was just off on his side of the stage at all times. Anytime he would cross over, everyone else would move to the other side of the stage. Like no one wanted to interact with him. And I'm wondering, given all the weirdness around that band, if they maybe was a similar experience.
Well, I didn't get to go, but I had friends that went, and they. I don't know. You're so wrapped up in the nostalgia. I'm not sure. And especially with at the drive-in, there's a lot of jumping around and getting involved in the music, so I'm not sure. But yes, at the drive-in is. Are you dying?
No, I'm fine. I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's okay.
At the drive-in, yeah, is a band that has had a huge amount of drama, which is why they broke up, and then they split into one good band and one bad band. It was
Uh,
Mars Volta and Sparta.
Sparta had a couple of good songs. They were not nearly as interesting as either At the Drive-In or Mars Volta, but there were a few good songs.
They felt a little too imitative, a little Me Too-y, in a way that I remember liking Sparta's first album and then
Yes.
quickly giving up on them after that.
Oh yeah, the second album was not, if I recall correctly, good at all. But that first like 4-song demo they put out, I thought was pretty great.
Yeah. Did you play any video games?
I did. So I decided I was going to jump into The Last of Us Remastered this weekend because normally I find playing replaying story-based games a little tedious. Like if I already kind of know everything that's happening, I don't necessarily want to go back and play it again. But given that The Last of Us was my favorite game last year, and the HD remake did look awful good, I decided to give it a shot. And lo and behold, I have been enjoying myself immensely. Like I managed to get up through past the Pittsburgh section of the game, just kind of, just playing casually and realizing, oh wait, I just dropped like several hours into this thing without even really intending to. That remake looks absolutely stunning. Like that, I didn't really know if how well it was going to translate. Like I figured, yeah, it would look nicer, but I didn't necessarily expect like a huge upgrade. But between like the 60 frames a second stuff, the polish on the visuals and just everything, like it just looks amazing.
And so, how does that work out relative to the story? Like, are you interested? Are you skipping the cutscenes?
No, I'm not. I kind of want to see how the cutscenes look with those new visuals, and it's like, I mean, the story in that game was definitely one of my favorite parts of it. I mean, I think it plays really well, but it's definitely the characters and the story that grabbed me initially. And even knowing what's going to happen, and even knowing like all the stuff that goes on with Bill, like it was no like I did not mind at all sitting through it again, because all that stuff is so good, and like those characters are so interesting that to me it felt entirely worth it to continue to watch all that stuff over and over again.
Yeah, I'm so sucked into Divinity at this point. I'm afraid, or I'm fairly sure at this point, The Last of Us Remastered will just sort of float by me, which is fine. I played it once, and other than being curious about how it looks and potentially playing it on hard, which is what Brad did when he played it, and he did that his first time through. And although it was frustrating for a little while, once it clicked, it seemed to be kind of the way to play that game. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really feel the pull, and that often I don't feel the pull to play games a second time most of the time, and on story stuff that is even more so.
Yeah. Yeah, normally I wouldn't, I wouldn't dive into an HD remake of something I've already played. Like, when the God of War games came around for like they re-released them on PS3, like I played a little bit of each of them and it was like, all right, that's fine. I've done this before. I don't need to do all of it again.
It also just hasn't been that much time.
No,
it's not.
it hasn't.
There's a novelty factor to playing technological updates to games you've played in the past, which is why, like the Team Eco games coming out on, PS3, like that, those are games that both strongly benefited from, actually having some more power behind them. And then it's, when it's been 5, 6, 7 years since you've played a game, it feels like you get a little more out of it, which I don't know if I would necessarily get a whole lot out of The Last of Us Remastered. I'm mostly excited it exists because it seems at this point that they're absolutely going to do a Last of Us sequel. I would be really shocked if they didn't do something else in that world. Based on that live show, it seems like they're happy leaving the characters and this arc behind, which I remain excited about, that they would do something completely different. At least it's there, so when The Last of Us 2, whatever it ends up being, then that's a much more convenient way to play the game again, or at least dip your toe into that world before that sequel rolls around in 3-4 years.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I agree. I don't necessarily need to see more out of Joel and Ellie. I think that arc is pretty well wrapped up, by that game. And again, it normal. Like I finished that game in October. Like that, it has not been a long time since I went into that stuff. But at the same time, the difference is significant enough, like the visual difference and just the overall. And I don't know, man, that game's just so good. Like I don't even really care. Like I don't mind that I've played through it again already, because it's worth it. Like it's good enough where it holds my attention no matter what. Like that's a game that I feel like I can kind of go back to any time. Even if I've already beaten it, and just replay, and it feels, it's worthwhile. I still haven't played that DLC at all, and I'm kind of waiting until I get through this campaign again before I go in and dive into that. And I haven't touched the multiplayer. I don't know, since that game originally came out on PS3. I remember liking it a lot, but I didn't get super into it, so I might dig into that again. Because
it was good. I mean, when I'm not a multiplayer guy at all, and when I was reviewing that, I wanted to put in my time with that, if nothing more than just to say, yep, it's there and you shoot guys. But I found myself really, really enjoying the 5 or 6 hours of the multiplayer that I did play. The sort of meta campaign that takes place over it, was kind of neither here nor there for me. That part didn't really grab me, but the just the pacing of that gameplay is
Mhm.
what kind of grabbed me, and like the Call of Duty style, super fast headshots all everywhere, like that. A, I can't keep up, and B, I just don't find it all that compelling. But the deliberate, paced way that things happen and unfold in The Last of Us multiplayer, and the fact that you have small teams that have to work together, all of that, clicked really well. And it was just, it's even though I didn't end up playing much of it after release, it's Naughty Dog takes their time with that stuff. They may have gone into creating multiplayer for their games because they wanted additional stickiness, but they didn't create it cynically. They
Right.
made multiplayer in Uncharted and in Last of Us that really fit that world, that was a lot of fun to play, and was deliberately different than what else was out there.
Yeah, there was no reason to believe that multiplayer would be compelling at all. Just based on the merits of most single-player games like that, just don't have great multiplayer when it's thrown in there. That mode is something else. Like that mode is definitely something kind of worthwhile and entertaining, and I think maybe I should look into going back to it after I finish up the story. Um, did you watch the whole the performance that they did last week?
No, I didn't find all of that particularly interesting.
I
It
thought that was
seemed.
a I thought it was a neat idea. I watched chunks of it, and it was kind of neat to watch those actors, play out a few of those scenes again and see the musicians play out some of the soundtrack. But I couldn't watch the whole thing. Like at a certain point, I was just like, this is a cool experiment. I don't need to watch all of this.
Yeah, I mean, I understand it was kind of like a live action director's commentary sort of thing, where you're getting, Neil Druckmann setting up and these different points in the story and what the developers were working on. Yeah, I absolutely think it was a cool one-off show that was absolutely worthwhile. I don't know, I didn't, other than the novelty of seeing the actors play out the scenes, there was, nothing about that I wanted to see out of context, unless they go all the way and actually make that movie that they've kind of teased they were working on at Comic-Con. Like I think The Last of Us could be a really cool world in a feature film, but outside of that, I was just kind of like, I mean, I'm glad it exists, but that's
Yeah.
not for me.
Haven't they all but said that movie is actually happening, or at least it's in, like early pre-production or
Like Sam
whatever?
Raimi's on
Like,
board as producer, which it doesn't mean a whole lot. Sam Raimi's a guy that kind of slaps his name on a lot of stuff,
sure.
but they did say they met with the girl from Game of Thrones, Maria
Oh, that's
Williams
right.
or something like that. What did I make
Maisie
up?
Williams.
Maisie Williams, yeah, who is a true delight on Twitter.
Oh,
If
yes.
you do not follow her on Twitter, even if you aren't into Game of Thrones, I recommend it. She is really damn funny and really just embraces the weird world that she now finds herself in, as now a major worldwide celebrity that is on an incredibly violent television show. And yeah, she's very funny. So yeah, I
Good.
think she'd be perfect for Ellie. And I think The Last of Us would, of all the game properties that kind of get snatched up and potentially made into television or movies, The Last of Us fits awfully well because a whole lot of it kind of is a movie
Yeah.
already.
Yeah, for sure. No, so that's what I ended up spending a bunch of my weekend on. I had intended to play a couple of other things, but then I lost pretty much all of Saturday to The Last of Us, and then I just ended up playing some more Crypt of the Necrodancer, which is still good. I continue to play it, and I will probably continue to play that for a good long while. Did you end up playing anything this weekend?
I sprinted through as much of Divinity as I could. I thought a couple of days ago it seemed like it'd be possible for me to spend 4 hours on 4 or 5 hours on Saturday and Sunday, and I'd be able to make my way to the other side of that game, and it did not happen. I posted a
Oh,
screenshot on over the weekend that people indicated, oh, you've got a ways to go, buddy, and we're a ways to go, and I'm 40 hours in. I'm still having an absolutely great time, but it appears that there's much more to that game than my gut had been telling me, and I even used, I referenced the site, what is it called? Time to beat. Yeah, howlongtobeat.com. which I use pretty frequently as just a tool to get a sense of like how close I am to the end of a game without having to go to like YouTube spoiler videos or game facts or anything. And that one had put that game at 45 hours, and I'm rapidly approaching that, and I don't think that's quite where I'm going to end up. But I had an interesting moment playing the game over the weekend, and I posted a screenshot of that where I ran into this battle that I just was getting my ass whooped. I was just having no success whatsoever. Like I was trying the battle over and over again, and it wasn't like I was just getting bad rolls with the attacks. Whatever my strategy was not panning out. Maybe I had the wrong character set up for what was happening. But so I started kind of like I did some searching on the Steam forums for that particular battle, and it seemed like it was one that a lot of folks were having trouble with. And then there was just this thread in which people were describing their alternative tactics to try and mitigate the problems in the fight, and they started exploiting certain things that the AI will and won't respond to. So the tactic I ended up running with was...
I can already tell you're not proud of this, just by your face.
I don't know. I'll get to that part after I describe the tactic. I have mixed feelings about it, but the way the battle is sort of set up is you kind of go to enter a room, this like kind of a square space, and once you do that, that triggers this sort of sorcerer to come down in front of your group, and then 4 really powerful sort of brute enemies off on the perimeter that start making their way in. And that was my problem, is these brute enemies were able to cast all sorts of crazy spells that just really weakened my team, and I just wasn't able to get the damage in I needed before things just kind of stacked and stacked and stacked. So chairs in the Divinity universe, which this may be a bug that gets addressed at some point, are invulnerable and cannot be defeated. No matter what you do, swing your battle axe, cast fire magic on them, nothing. So there are a lot of chairs in this surrounding area, and there's a table just in front of where the enemies begin to spawn. So what I did was I went and dragged a bunch of chairs over, because you can like kind of telepathically move or telekinetically move them to different spaces. And so I used the chairs to create 2 walls, which then kept the sorcerer right in front of me. I ran into the room that is right next to me, which meant that none of the other guys on the perimeter could attack me with even spells because they just had lost line of sight. And then I would wait for the sorcerer to come in. I hacked him to bits. I'd send out one of my other magicians who has a teleportation spell. He would target one of the brutes, bring him in, and then we'd all run back into the room again. We would just hack them to pieces. So I would just systematically take these guys out one by one. And there was a great moment where the AI, it seemed like it became aware of what I was doing. It really wasn't. It was just it had no other moves to make.
Yeah.
But the AI, 2 of the enemies just ran away and faced the wall and said, "No, we're not coming over. We're not going to get teleported into your little section, your little circle of death." And so I actually had to go back out and then move the chairs out of the way and chase them down. But they were just I took another screenshot where they're facing away and just refused to engage. And they're like, "This is unfair. This is cheating." And I was like, "Well, I don't know. Is it cheating? It's exploitative for sure. I did win the fight, and I haven't had trouble with the fights afterwards, which suggests to me that maybe the fight was just not particularly well constructed, or I don't know." But in any case,
bad guys were the ones who were cheating. Maybe you just turned the tables on them. How about that?
I turned the chairs on them. Is what I did.
Oh, god damn it! God fucking. Oh yeah. All right. Do you think that's canon? Do you think there's like a canonical reason why the chairs are indestructible?
I don't know.
Or do you want to
I don't know. But I didn't feel bad about it. The game is playful. Like Divinity is a game that there are all sorts of other things you can exploit too. That I guess maybe they could be patched out at a later point. But I sort of just chalk it up to the game allowing you to bend its rules if you choose to. Like for example, you have a party of 4. Or at least I have a party of 4. You can have smaller parties if you want. And on the left-hand side of the interface, they are chained together, which allows you to group them so they all kind of walk together. But all you have to do is drag your mouse over, and they then they can become kind of their own separate parties and walk around independently. And for any boss in the game, for any fight in the game, but particularly for bosses where you're kind of one-on-one, if you get one person in conversation with the boss, which is what always happens before you actually fight them, the other people can just go surround him and attack him and kill him while the other person is stuck in a conversation with them. Like, the game doesn't account for the other characters in the world. And that's an exploit that I think goes a little bit too far. And my chair exploit would not work in the vast majority of battles. Like, this was a very specific one in which I was able to employ this tactic, but it was a perhaps overlooked part of the chair attributes that I was able to use to my advantage for this very specific instance. But I don't know. People celebrate in games like Dark Souls where you get to exploit, weird things in the environment and AI and stuff like that, and they don't feel bad. In fact, it's celebrated in the game for you to try and find ways to kind of bend the game. And in Divinity, although not as masochistic as the Souls games, I don't know. It felt like, hey, you can do this in the world. If this is what you find fun, go for it.
Yeah, I feel like if this was something you were doing over and over and over again, like this was a tactic you could just exploit constantly, then that might be an issue. But it was a situational thing. It was a specific situation where you found something to your advantage. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think you did a damn thing wrong. I think you played the game the way it was intended to be played, damn it. I think you still achieved something.
Once I found it, once I realized that I could do this, like, what was I supposed to do? Not do it?
Exactly! Exactly!
It's like, once I realized, oh, I can make this fight trivial. It'll take forever, but it's now trivial. I can't put the genie back in the bottle. Like, I've never used the distract a boss with an enemy. Like, that seems like a step too far. That's you haven't even initiated combat, and you're killing an enemy. That's too much. That's too far even for me. I can't quite bring myself to do that. But using the environment that is well around me to kind of mess with some AI pathfinding. And then I had other folks reaching out to me saying that this is a fairly common tactic that folks have used in other battles. For example, some other folks have taken to using chairs to create a funnel of death, so that the only way for the enemies to get them is to run through this gauntlet of chairs, so that you then have to face the enemies one-on-one, which I thought was pretty fun.
Yeah, that's the 300 tactic. Remember in the story of 300 where they used all those chairs to get narrow the Persian army to get at them? Like, that was, that is celebrated battle tactics right there, man. You're just doing what you're supposed to do. There's nothing wrong with it.
That's true. So that was a really terrific moment I had in that game over the weekend. I hoped I'd get through it so I could review it, but I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I'll still review it when I get through there, and maybe I am closer than I thought. But Katie's brother is in town and staying with us all weekend, and he is staying in this room that has the computer. So I might have to switch my own game playing tactics to something else, because I'm not sure I will get much Divinity in this week. But as I was telling you earlier, I am supposed to have a second monitor that shows up at some point this week. So, given that August doesn't have a whole lot going on, maybe that might be a time to, like I said, boot up Demon Souls now that I have a way to stream some of that. And I also now will have an opportunity to expand what we do on Spookin' with Scoops, which had traditionally been PC games, but I've kind of I've kind of played everything that I've wanted to play. There are some other smaller things that we could look into, but I've really wanted to do a serious playthrough of Fatal Frame.
Yeah.
All of those games are on PlayStation Network, so now with a second monitor, I should be able to pretty easily pull that off. And so maybe look for that next week once I get that second monitor kind of set up.
I look forward to that. I have not played any of those original Fatal Frame long time, and to watch those games have, because holy shit, those are some of the scariest fucking games I've ever played. Those first two Fatal Frame games.
Yeah, they're really, really good, and I hope if I play some Fatal Frame games for the site, then I can will the new Fatal Frame game into an existence on Wii U in America. I can
It's
do
called
it myself.
drumming up interest. It's like you're seeding the marketplace in North America for them to bring it out. It's like the frothing demand for Fatal Frame has never been higher.
Yeah.
Thanks, Patrick Levick.
And then maybe I can finally play that X-Files game on PS2. That was PS2, wasn't it? PS2. Like
Oh
the
man, what was that
semi-decent
on? I actually
X-Files
don't
game.
remember.
X-Files video game, PS2. Yes, Resist or Serve. That is the one that apparently is kind of okay. I don't know if it's kind of okay in 2014. That seems probably not true. But
Yeah, maybe less likely.
we'll see. And we also need to play
So,
that Lost game for our Lost podcast. So
oh
so all
god,
those things may begin to happen with the
I'm
advent
so
of the second
sorry
monitor.
that you have to play that game because that game is the hottest of hot garbage.
It's bad. It's bad. So yes, that's basically what I played this weekend. It sounds like you just kind of chipped away at what you got going on.
Yeah. It sounds like my connection is starting to break down a little bit. Sorry about that. I have no idea what's going on. If my connection is bad, then unfortunately there's not much I can do about it. But
We
yeah,
are going
sorry.
to investigate moving off Google Hangouts because I am sort of tired with how much of a pain in the ass it is.
Sort of the worst.
I'm going to see if I can use Skype video through XSplit or OBS, and while Skype is not a terrific product either, it is a more reliable product than Google Hangouts. We've only used Google Hangouts just because they're easier. Like
Yeah.
that was the kind of the whole premise behind it. And you can stream video on the site very easily. But yeah, I don't know. Between my video getting choppy for no reason, despite my connection being rock solid, and I don't know, just generally speaking, it's a pile of garbage. So
Yep.
apologies for that, and we are going to investigate other solutions. There was so Ubisoft talked to IGN, I believe late on Friday after our show, and basically just confirmed that that Beyond Good and Evil 2 is actually happening. Ubisoft gave a quote in which they said it's still far too early to give details about this new title. But what we can say is that Michel and Ubisoft Montpellier are working on the core tenets of Beyond Good and Evil, developing something that aspires to push the boundaries of a proverbial sequel and leverages next-gen technologies to deliver a truly surprising, innovative, and exceptional game. The entire team is excited about the direction of this extremely ambitious project, and we'll have more to share later as it progresses. So, I guess they're working on a sequel. I don't know. I just feel like at this point, of course they would say that.
Yeah. That's what you say. You have to keep the fires alive, I guess. But I don't know. Do you trust it?
Sure. I trust anything Michel Ancel is going to make.
Yeah. That seems like a reasonable tact to take, because
It just seems a little odd that they would just confirm it right off the bat, and I think at this point, even talking about a sequel to that game is a little bit odd
Yeah.
because it's been teased and mentioned and discussed ad nauseum for years and years now. So if you're gonna make it, fine, but just go dark, go quiet, go make the game, and then when you have something to share, say it. Like I like the tactic that Valve has taken with Half-Life 3, where they've made vague allusions that they are trying to figure out how to continue Half-Life and bring that story to a conclusion, but it's not like every year they overtly mention, "Oh yeah, we're working on it," and blah 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 blah. I don't know. Sony has at least done the same thing with The Last Guardian of just they quietly acknowledge that they're working on it, but they don't sort of tease ad nauseum that they're just because it seems like Beyond Good and Evil, they've never actually really been working towards a releasable product, and then it just creates this sort of annoying tension between the audience and the creators of will they, won't they, and just go do it and then come back when you've got something to show for it.
Yeah, it's just weird because it's like, how many different things must they have scrapped at this point if that game is still not even at a point where they can actually announce, like, here it is, here's what we're working on in any way, shape, or form? Like, what has that project been for the last, like, 8 years or however long it's been since they first announced it.
It's been a while. I mean, that's teaser. Let's see. Beyond Good and
Like, you look at Half-Life, like, they at least had those episodic things they were working on for a while, and then you figure at some point someone just said, well, instead of a third episode, we just made a third fucking game. And then you figure probably that's what they're working on. Last Guardian, like, that thing hasn't really changed a whole lot. I mean, other than it's changing platforms and whatever else, so you figure they've just been trying to make that into an actual game that works. I don't even know what they've been doing with Beyond Good and Evil 2.
Yeah, I don't know. They showed that at first that teaser trailer in 2008. It is 2014.
Yeah.
I just get really exhausted with the endless sort of, is this going to happen? Isn't going to, like, just shut up. Just come back to me when you can actually say either. I'd actually prefer they just said it was dead, and then quietly went and worked on it, as opposed to just stoking the flames of fans over and over again every couple of years, which, from their perspective might be because they want, it might not be a cynical exploitative ploy. It might just be they want to try and be honest with the players and the fans. But I don't know. I don't want to talk about it. I'm just so tired of it. Just
Yeah,
it
that's
comes
fair.
out and it comes out, and it's
Better get off the pot.
pretty much. But I would play. I would like one if I. I would like another Beyond Good and Evil. That was a great game.
Yeah, it was.
Let's see. No Man's Sky coming to PC after PlayStation 4 launch, which sounds about right.
Yeah.
I'm not super shocked that that game is going to come out on the PlayStation 4 ahead of being on the PC, given how much Sony has gotten behind this game in a really big way. So, that's these days that doesn't mean the PC version isn't coming. It just means please be patient for a couple of months while hopefully some people buy this console because of this console game.
Yeah, fair enough. Did you see the news that hit this morning? The big iOS news from 2K?
Oh, God, you almost went to an event for this.
No, I did. I actually went.
Oh, you
it
went?
wasn't anything. I went and I played it. So Bioshock, the original Bioshock, is coming to iOS. Patrick, how excited are you?
It's not. I mean, I don't know. You tell me. Should I be excited? How does it work?
So it's a first-person shooter on an iPad, which comes with its own set of challenges. You move with your thumb on the left bottom portion of the screen and use the camera on the right portion, or you can use a controller. Like, they had one set up and said, "Here, just use this. You can also do that." It's Bioshock. They rejiggered the game to work on the iPad. They scaled it down in certain places, but fundamentally the gameplay is kind of the same. It's just you can definitely tell where they've made some omissions in order to make it run properly on that system. I don't really know what to say about that, other than okay.
How did they have you playing it?
They let me try both the iPad version and the controller. They just handed me an iPad and said, just go ahead, play the opening section of this game. And so I did, and I remembered all the parts from the opening section of the game and said, yeah, I remember playing this several years ago, only now it's on a smaller screen, and I touch stuff, and that works. I don't know. I mean, like, the touch controls seem fine. The game seemed tuned well enough to where the touch controls actually worked pretty okay. The controller stuff worked too. Like, it all seemed to function. I guess I just don't really understand why it exists now, because I like Bioshock. Bioshock's a great game. I don't have a problem with it existing on other platforms. I don't know what the timing for this was. I don't know what the impetus was. And when I kind of asked about, like, why bring this out on this platform? What was the development cycle all about? Like, what made this happen? They didn't really have a whole lot to say other than Bioshock's a great game. So I don't know. I don't know why this exists. It's a weird thing. If you've been looking to replay Bioshock, I don't know necessarily the iPad version is the first one I would go for, but it's there if you want it, I guess.
Well, they're clearly they're committed to Bioshock. They said that even after Irrational sort of disbanded / reformed itself and are moving on to different ideas and projects that Bioshock would continue to live on. And I guess what 2K Marin was essentially handed that series and is gonna work on it. I can't remember which side of 2K said that they were now the ones that were taking Bioshock forward. I am super curious to see what happens with Bioshock in the future. Because
Yeah.
obviously, yeah, because the series has such a huge following, it makes a ton of sense to continue making more of those, even if Ken Levine is not interested in being the one to do it. But like, what do you even do with a Bioshock 3, given that Bioshock Infinite was seemed semi-written, created to like bring that series full circle into a close. I guess maybe I guess you could view it as closing the Ken Levine chapter of whatever Bioshock is. But I don't like what they're gonna make another game set in Rapture. I mean, I just don't even know what you even do with another Bioshock game.
I don't either. And, at this point, it seems like maybe they're still trying to figure that out too. Like maybe this is just their stopgap way of reminding people that, hey, Bioshock's still something that exists, just to kind of keep the mind share there while they try and figure that out. This was made by 2K China. I know that much. But yeah, I think you're right. I think it is. I don't think 2K Marin in its original incarnation still exists. I think there's another studio they have out in the Bay Area that is some of those people that I think uh, is now what Marin was, but I don't think the exact 2K Marin that was there before is still around. I could be wrong about that, but I remember there being something where they shuttered one studio and then opened another one or something.
Yeah. I looked up an article, and it's definitely 2K Marin who is going to be heading up. However, that goes forward. There's a quote from the head of Take Two, Strauss Zelnick. We haven't given any color on how you should think about it yet, except we do believe it's beloved. We think it's important and certainly something we're focused on, something 2K Marin will be responsible for shepherding going forward. I don't want to say much else except to agree with you. I think there's a lot of upside in that franchise. Hasn't necessarily been realized yet. And the question for the future, assuming we decide to answer that question, I guess maybe it's not 100% guaranteed that they continue going forward, would be how do you stay true to that creativity? How do you do something exciting? How do you expand the market? That'd be the natural drill. Drill. Starting from a good point, I don't think he intentionally made that pun. We're starting from a good point on it, and certainly it's been a great piece of business for us. It's been a profitable piece of business. There's probably still room for someone to make that spiritual successor to System Shock. You could certainly see someone taking the structure of Bioshock and putting that into space. It has been a long time since System Shock 2.
Yeah.
So if someone wanted to take a crack at that, that could be potentially interesting, assuming that the Dishonored guys are rumored to be working on something that was kind of a spiritual successor to System Shock as well, given that Dishonored kind of played in a similar sort of setup. But I don't know. I'm confident there will be another Bioshock game. I hope if someone 2K Marin, whoever the creative leads that are tasked with making that, I'd love to see them do something completely bold and different and break away from that as opposed to just Bioshock in a new world.
Yeah, keep some of the same core gameplay ideas, but just take the story or whatever else and just make it your own. Because, like you said, the way Infinite closes out, that is, you don't need to just keep doing that same formula. Like they have said what they were going to say with that series. It is what it is. Like, just take some of those mechanics and make it something completely unfamiliar. It's time to advance that beyond kind of what Irrational was doing, because if you're just doing what Irrational was doing, it just feels like you're just trying to keep, you're just covering what those games were. You're not actually making your own. Like I want to see Bioshock exist as something else. I don't need more of the same.
Yeah, you can certainly take this sort of thematic, or just the idea, like if the core of Bioshock is like being brought to a different world and like feeling like it has been fully realized, that's a pretty broad mandate for what another Bioshock has to be, and you keep the name because the name has relevance and will move
Right.
copies on its name alone. But Yeah, I would hope they feel a desire and are given, the latitude from 2K to just make completely their own thing, because that was kind of the hang up that Bioshock 2 had, was when you're sort of in the shadow of Ken Levine's creations, uh, you kind of get wrongfully maligned for that. I think Bioshock 2 is a better game than people give it credit for. I think
Yeah.
it has, Bioshock 1's ending is god awful, and Bioshock 2, like the whole setup for the final boss and stuff
Well,
like
the
that.
final boss was terrible. Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't necessarily think the whole ending was bad, but that whole section was bad.
but Bioshock 2's ending is astounding. It's terrific. I really really love the kind of the way they flip a lot of things, conventions about the Bioshock universe on its head with the ending of Bioshock 2, or at least the ending kind of sort of sequences. And yeah, I think Bioshock 2 is a pretty great game that got overlooked because Ken Levine was off making the quote unquote real Bioshock. So I would
Yeah.
hope that whatever Bioshock 3 is, if they call it that or call it something else, it's more along the lines of doing what Ken wanted to do, which was kind of make a completely new game that feels a little bit familiar, but radically different in a lot of ways. And I would hope they get the opportunity to do something like that.
Yeah, for sure. Breaking news, hot off the presses, very important. John Cena has just tweeted a screenshot from WWE 2K15. People in the chat are passing this around. And it's actually a pretty damn good looking screenshot that is actually sort of in keeping with the PowerPoint presentation that Jeff and I saw at E3, where they showed off some of the character model stuff, and that was about it, because that game was not in a showable state in June. So that's probably the first. That is actually the first glimpse, I guess. They have showed it all of that game. The thing that is interesting about that is that Visual Concepts, I guess, is doing a lot of the visual production work for that game, and them being the folks that make the NBA 2K series. That gives one some hope that those games will finally stop looking just a hot mess, because holy shit, those WWE games have looked bad for a long time. So this could be finally a step forward of some kind for those games. That would be nice.
Yeah, I don't mean to go back to Bioshock, but AJ Rue in the chat says Bioshock in space with David Bowie. I'm in.
Yeah. Yeah,
David
okay.
Bowie is some sort of malevolent AI or whatever, space captain.
No, he's just David Bowie.
Stacked. Just actually, David Bowie has gone nuts with
Yeah.
power. He just went off to the moon to create his own little moon base.
He achieved his final form. He became all powerful. You have to stop him.
I wish he acted more. I wish he was in more movies. He's really good.
Yeah, I think he's pretty happy just kind of doing whatever he feels like at this point. I don't think he feels the need to continue on with that.
So are you excited for the new WWE? Are you curious more than anything?
I mean, given that they had basically nothing to show at E3, I have to imagine that game is going to be a little more bare bones than we're used to. Especially given that it is the first next-gen entry or current-gen entry for that series. That said, I am curious. It sounds like Dan and I will be headed out to SummerSlam this year, where they are going to be showing the game for the first time, where I guess we'll be able to play it. I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to seeing what it's going to be. I am not holding out a great deal of hope that that is going to be a really feature-rich and, just a great game all around. I imagine it's going to be a visually much more impressive game. Probably is going to lose a little bit of stuff in the transfer from platform to the new platforms.
I mean, it seems
I guess they are making it for the old ones too. So we'll see.
Yeah, you'd have to imagine that this has kind of been a rush to production sort of creation, and that in order they need to get on that annual cycle, and just getting it out the door at least kind of gets their feet planted in place to
Exactly.
I mean, like you said, they're sort of starting from scratch with a lot of this stuff that, I guess the best you can hope for is it'll look really great, and then hopefully it plays okay enough, and it doesn't have to play probably too great to if the visuals are that much of a step up, and then they can kind of start building out from there, because at least Visual Concepts is committed to stuff like that, and they've Seems like they will probably care a little bit more than Ukes has cared in the past about the amount of effort put into those.
Yeah, I mean, Ukes is still working on it. I mean, they're still doing a lot of that stuff. I think they're working in tandem with VC. It's just that I think they're taking over a lot of the art assets and that kind of stuff. So I mean, that's definitely where Ukes has struggled among other places. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would love to see them just completely reboot that series and just, as much as Ukes has been a staple of those games for a very long time, I think maybe it's time that they weren't anymore. But we'll see. I don't know. It doesn't seem like they're aching to get away from those guys. It just looks like they're just trying to supplement them with more resources than perhaps they've had in the past.
Yeah, but I wonder if that could also be like a gradual transition where
Could be.
you need Ukes around because Visual Concepts doesn't know how to build a wrestling game, and then what you end up doing in the next 2-3 years is moving that away from Ukes and onto
Right.
to someone else because maybe you really do. I don't know. I'd be curious. Yeah, maybe by taking the visuals and handing them off to Visual Concepts a little bit, maybe that gives them some of the freedom to do some more
Yeah.
with it. But
The
I,
one thing that does give me some hope is that just from talking to a variety of different people who were there during the THQ years and are still there now, it sounds like 2K is much, much more interested and invested in trying to make those games, like give them resources to make those games good than THQ ever was. THQ was very much in a place where that was their cash cow, that was just their source of revenue. They didn't really care about spending any money on it. They just wanted it because the licensing was enough to get them paid so they can make other shit. 2K sounds like they actually are into it. So here's hoping that actually blossoms into like a good partnership.
yeah, that'd be nice, especially given how much people truly love those games. That'd be kind of that THQ just kind of looked at it with more or less googly money eyes and disdain is a little unfortunate given that people have a lot of passion for that
Yeah,
series and for wrestling. So to actually have 2K want to give a shit, maybe yeah, I guess it's possible that's all. Maybe that was the holdup all along, is just having a publisher that actually wanted to invest and expand what these games could be. Because even as someone from the outside that doesn't really watch wrestling, but then listen to you guys talk about it and see these games, seems like there was a whole lot of potential there, and it would never quite get realized year over year.
yeah, it's been squandered for years. I mean, they didn't reboot the series at all until just a few years ago. Like they were still running on basically the same engine they were using for the PS2 for a long time, and that is not indicative of great things. So yeah, here's hoping it pans out into something good.
I want googly money eyes.
Yeah, googly money eyes, just dollar signs just bulging out of my eye sockets.
I thought this was a little bit interesting. There was some news about Destiny that came out, specifically how it's handling its end game sort of scenarios. So Destiny's end game raids will kind of require you to have 6 players playing at once, and they won't allow matchmaking in order for you to fulfill those requirements. I don't know if my guess is that means these are different than the story. These are not like if you
Yeah,
want to see the end of the campaign sort of stuff, but if you want to do sort of the high end end game raid equivalent in Destiny, the Bungie is pretty specific in saying they want you to be with 5 friends that you trust, as opposed to just partnering with 5 folks. There's some quotes from Bungie in there that suggest they need you to feel comfortable with the people you're playing with, or else you're just going to get stomped. So I think it's an interesting design decision. I wonder if they end up sticking with it. If
yeah.
that game hits a mass audience that demands they just get to partner with whoever they want. But the idea they would kind of put a restriction like that in there that is not a technological sort of restriction, I think is kind of interesting from a design side.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense. I mean, it's only disappointing by virtue of the fact that I mean, when I was playing the beta, I thought that the matchmaking stuff seemed to work really well. Like it was really easy to get people into a group. I never had any issue getting into the was it the team firefighter, whatever that has like the matchmaking. I don't know. I mean, if it's really that tough, I mean, I understand the reasoning behind it. I just think that there are going to be people who don't have a rich friend group, that are going to want to play that game. So I have to imagine that at some point there has to be some kind of concession made there because, and this is a really depressing thing to say, but I'm just going to put it out there, what if somebody doesn't have any friends?
Well, and it's also, like what if you find a situation where you have like 4 people ready to go, but you don't have, or 5 people ready to go, but you don't have that sixth man. And
Right.
so is the game really going to say, well, you know what, you couldn't get that sixth guy, so you just can't go do this? Like that seems like an unfortunate limitation. Like I completely understand it from Bungie's perspective of wanting to ensure that people have the best experience, right? And they're
Yeah.
crafting these in a way that, from their perspective, you have less of a chance to enjoy it if you're going in there and playing it with random friends or just randomly assigned folks. But I don't know. It seems like this is. I'm not going to be surprised if 1 month in they completely lift this restriction and just say, fine, if you want to go in and do this on your own, that we tried.
Yeah. I just don't think you can make restrictions like that on a game that is going to presumably be played by a lot of people because there are going to be different situations where, again, there are people who don't have friends or there are just people who can't organize enough friends, and it just putting restrictions on stuff like that, that's just you're just asking for people to get upset at you. So I don't think that's going to last if that is indeed the case.
The one thing that I do understand is that the way Bungie explained is that these raids are not like 20-minute missions. These could last several hours. There's a lot that is involved with them, and you have a much likelier chance that your friends are going to stick through it than you do with a random assortment of strangers who you don't know, right? Because like that would be Bungie's perspective on this, is that if you really do need 6 fully capable human beings that you can communicate with regularly while you're playing, and the alternative is that they matchmake you, someone ends up having to go to dinner or something, leaves
Right.
halfway through, then the raid is now for naught, and you can't continue it because either it boots you out with less than 6, or the difficulty is such that you cannot complete it without the full party. Like, is it a better experience to say you just can't participate in this content unless you get that kind of crowd together, because the alternative is you going in and having a really bad time
Yeah.
because they can't control. And I think that is absolutely a valid perspective. I just think they will also end up walking away from it and saying, fine, if you want to have a bad time, go do it on your own.
Brandhog or Brandhog in the chat makes a fair point, which is to say, well, why not just have a good matchmaking system that fills in empty spots if someone ditches out? I don't know. That might be too hard. That might be a difficult thing to do on the fly, especially. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, there are ways around it. There are other solutions. Again, I just don't think that, I think people will be equally as mad if they can't play, end game content because they don't have this specific set of criteria met as they would be as if they were just able to jump in and then someone ditched out. Like, it's kind of a lose-lose situation.
And also what we don't know is that how much are you playing of this game before you're reaching this end game content? Like, I don't think this means finishing the campaign. I think this is, this is for high-level, high-end players that are really invested in playing Destiny and want to get more of the, the best possible like gear drops that only come from going on raids, which is, from my limited understanding of MMOs, that's kind of how that stuff works in those games as well. I'll be pretty upset if this is campaign locked. If it's not, then I think it's certainly more excusable or understandable. And also, it's entirely possible that you'll have, it's possible that at this point, before you even get to the end game stuff, you can easily invest 60, 70 hours of time and be really happy, and then the end game is only for the complete extreme completionist that wants to see more of what's out there. So if at that point, am I really going to be upset that I don't get to see this content after I've already played 60 hours, which it'd be tough for me to imagine me playing 60 hours of this game to begin with?
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's an interesting thought experiment, but until we have the full context of the amount of content that is in this game, which I think continues to be sort of a giant question mark,
Yeah.
Because we can't think of it in the terms that we think of other games, which is, oh, it'll have, an 8 to 10 hour campaign and then multiplayer. Like this, Destiny is an MMO, but also has a bunch of content that can kind of be played single player, and I don't, where does that begin and end, and how does that mix up with the other stuff? We just don't know.
Yeah, fair enough.
So I don't know. I get the impression from this stuff that it's going to be only for people that are investing dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of hours into the game,
Right.
and that it might be easy to get upset in the abstract, but the vast majority of us may never end up even seeing or want to see this
Yeah.
content, and it won't matter.
Yeah, I think you're probably right in that regard.
But it does make me continue to be interested in Destiny.
Yeah, I'm still interested. I enjoyed the beta. I just hearing stuff like that and hearing stuff about like, I don't know, there was that rumor going around about there only being like one area per planet or something, and that sounded kind of weird to me, though I don't know that was necessarily the exact, like, I don't know how true that was. I never actually followed up to see if like that had been confirmed or not, but I don't know. It just sounds like there's some weird stuff in that game.
And also, when you just start using MMO terms, I
Yeah.
start to fall asleep. When
The
you
eyes
say,
just kind of roll back in the head.
yeah, when you start saying raid, you start to lose me. It's just kind of,
Yeah.
there's, I don't play MMOs, and so you use MMO terms, and I just start kind of to float off into space. But that's kind of all the news I've got. There wasn't a whole lot that happened over the weekend, unless there's anything else you have seen.
Not really. I was just going to comment that who does play MMOs now is our own Dan Reichert, apparently.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, MMO expert Dan Reichert, who is his second foray into World of Warcraft with Jeff Gersman, which is just a really funny pairing for an MMO.
Yes.
That went up this morning, I believe, if you want to follow the continuing adventures of Dan Reichert and Orcs.
I'm just trying to think how many other MMOs are even left at this point, because a lot of them are gone. There aren't very many left. There's like Star Wars. Is Star Trek Online still around? Does that still exist in some sort of free-to-play capacity?
Yeah, and there's Star Wars, Elder Scrolls Online still kind of kicking
Guild Wars
around.
stuff.
Guild Wars. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff kicking around, but it is certainly not the zeitgeist that it used to be.
No.
It seems like that kind of
The salad days of MMOs are long past.
it kind of hit its apex with Star Wars, and then because it's like that was BioWare trying to bring a lot of what they do in RPGs to sort of a mass scale, and I think we may have passed sort of the apex of the RPG MMO, and what we're going to see going forward is MMO elements that find their ways into other genres to try and make them scale in a way that they haven't in the past. And Destiny is the first really big, potentially good experiment in that direction. There have obviously been other. What was that? The Sci-Fi Defiance, the Sci-Fi Channel.
Yeah.
That was kind of a shooter, and that was an interesting idea. That was a bad game from most accounts, and Destiny is a studio with shooter pedigree trying to bring that stuff into it, and I'll be curious to see what happens after that. But obviously, the amount of time, money that has gone into creating Destiny makes me think there are very few companies in the world that would be willing to even give that a shot.
Someone just mentioned Elder Scrolls Online. I had completely forgotten that came out this year. It just passed right by me, just right over my head.
Yeah.
And that's not even free to play yet. That's still doing the subscription thing.
That means it's making some amount of money for them. I can't imagine that you don't move to free to play as soon as it's financially beneficial. So, the Elder Scrolls audience is pretty big. Elder Scrolls is I think other than maybe WildStar, the sort of big MMO launch this year. And
right.
I wouldn't be surprised if a year from now Elder Scrolls goes free to play, but I don't think you don't cross that line until the numbers sort of add up in that direction. And then also going free to play, spikes interest in a way that maybe they don't quite need just yet. I mean, I've heard nothing but sort of middling things about it. I thought it might be a game that I would at least give a shot, but when it sounded so unlike the parts of Elder Scrolls that I like. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I guess that's the last piece of news before we close out. Nintendo's digital distribution business development manager. That is a mouthful.
God,
Dan
yeah.
Edelman. He's basically like the public face of Nintendo's independent stuff. He has left Nintendo of America. He tweeted, "Happy to announce that I reached an agreement with Nintendo America whereby I can tweet again. Arrangement includes my not working there anymore."
That dude has always seemed to have a pretty good sense of humor about the somewhat draconian state that he worked for a while there. But I also got the impression that he was there for 9 years, so that guy, he seemed like he was pretty dedicated to try and turn the Nintendo indie scene into something. And honestly, in the last few years, it has finally kind of developed into something. And it's pretty, that he did. It sounds like he did some pretty important work there, and that's cool. It's just unfortunate that the continued draconian policies eventually made him want to leave.
Yeah, there's this quote right here. Jason Schreier from Kotaku has an interview with him up on their website, and this man. So here's a bit from it. So last year, after Nintendo rejected 3DS port of the game Binding of Isaac because it violated their guidelines on religious content, Edelman said in an interview that his company needed to be a bit more flexible about restrictions and policies like that. A week later, he sympathized with a fan on Twitter complaining about region locking on Nintendo platforms. Shortly afterwards, Nintendo told Edelman he wasn't allowed to use Twitter anymore. Quote, "I had been strongly encouraged to stay off Twitter, or at least say things that were clearly safe. So after the region locking comment, they said I needed to stop completely. When people started complaining that I wasn't active on Twitter anymore, it was suggested that a PR person could just post in my name. I thought that was about the worst idea I'd ever heard, so I left it as is and let the silence speak for itself."
Yeah, that's a bad idea.
That's pretty damning on Nintendo as a company, sort of broadly speaking, and that's really unfortunate. It sounds like, by all accounts, people that interacted with him seem to really enjoy that as a, given that you're talking about a company that is not that outward and open to begin with, so to have the company sort of shut up the one guy out there is not great.
No.
It probably doesn't show well for the company.
Well, Nintendo has always seemed incredibly fearful of, letting anyone kind of go off the reservation even a little bit, especially when it comes to its own internal people and personalities. They're extremely locked down in terms of their messaging. They always have been. They're very tentative when it comes to social media and new technology and all that kind of stuff. It's just that company just does not move. It does not progress very quickly, and it's really unfortunate to see such a clear-cut example of someone who clearly wanted to help nudge them in that direction. Like, nothing that guy was doing was in any way, like, mean or harmful to the company. Like, all he was doing was pointing out policies that were just causing them more problems than they were probably worth. And, in the end, now he's gone. And that does not speak well of what the corporate culture over there is probably still like.
Yep. So what else what do you got going on this week?
There's a few things on my quick look list that I need to go look through. A few other games that are coming out this week that I need to check out. I've not actually sat there and stared at that list much because this weekend I just kind of wanted to vegetate a little bit. But Vinny and I have a couple of things planned for this week. We are still going to try and do that NFL 2K video. Apparently we had some issues with, again, our video setup, but thankfully it sounds like just about all our equipment has shown up now. All we're waiting on is some PC parts. Just about everything else we have now. So
Awesome.
He is just now finally wiring all that together and putting it all together and making it work. So I think we're probably about a week or so away from just being like almost fully functional, which is great. Very exciting about that.
Yeah. No, not having what you need to get that stuff working, especially for a guy like Vinny, who is he has real standards.
Yes.
For things like that, so I can't imagine how infuriating it is for him to. I mean, it kind of makes me laugh to imagine him just working all off a laptop because he's very he's crafty. He'll
Yes.
figure it out given whatever he has at his disposal. But I also can imagine it drives him nuts
Oh God.
to have to do it that way.
He is a goddamn saint. We've had delays, we've had stuff just not work right. We had a TV that was just broken out of the box, which was great. He's had all his personal stuff going on. You know, he's talked a little bit about like, you know, he's trying to get his house together, and then that has experienced some delays. So his life is in constant chaos right now, and he is not a man that enjoys chaos. He is a man who likes his zen, his peace, and he has not had that for a while. So that man is a saint for being able to pull it together as well as he has over the last like month and a half.
Yeah, all praise to Vinny Caravella.
Indeed.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what I have going on this week just yet. I need to sit down and figure that out. Had a lot of written pieces that went up on the site last week. I have kind of gone in a cycle of a week where I research stuff and then a week where stuff goes up. So I might be in another one of those weeks as I figure out what I want to work on going forward. So we'll see. We'll see what goes from there. If I get that second monitor today or tomorrow, I don't think it's shipped till Friday, so it might not come till Tuesday or Wednesday. But whenever that happens, I'll probably set up a stream and maybe do some console stuff. Maybe I can convince some jokers to swing by my apartment, and we'll do it with some folks. But in any case, that'll mark the end of the show, which means we're one step closer to Monday being over. Way to go, Alex.
Woohoo!
We did it, and I guess I'll talk to you on Friday.
Oh.